Alrighty, we're gonna get started. I want to start by saying a quick thank you to Imagination and Fernanda for allowing us to host this candidate forum here in this wonderful space. Woo! I also just want to mention briefly that Melissa will be doing table service. So if you want table service tonight, just do a little quick wave in their direction. Perfect. Alrighty, so my name's Lucia, and I'm the Missoula Field Manager with the Forward Montana Foundation. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm so excited that all of you folks are here. This is an amazing turnout, and it just shows that our community is so engaged and so passionate about building and growing these important connections and communities, so thank you. I'd like to take a quick moment to thank also the candidates for showing up. We have Monica Trinnell, Tom Winter, Mitch Hewer, and Matt Jetty. I also want to say a quick thank you to Clara Bentler, who is here in the red. She will be timekeeping for us tonight, so candidates, make sure that you are, keeping an eye out for her, because we will cut you off. And then also, I would like to introduce our other volunteer.
I'm Clara. Nice to see you all.
Perfect. Alrighty, I'd also like to start by taking a moment to acknowledge that we're on the unceded territory of the Salish and Kootenai people, as well as the common hunting ground of many other tribal nations who continue to be stewards of this valley in the face of years of colonization and displacement.
If you have the means, we'd like to invite you all to donate to the MT BIPOC Mutual Aid Fund on Venmo at MT BIPOC Aid, at MT BIPOC-AID. In reminding people of the importance of supporting mutual aid, we hope to provide an opportunity to step away from performativity and into action and reparation. All donated funds will be redistributed to BIPOC Montanans who need it. Thank you so much.
Alrighty, and with that, we're going to start going over the event timeline and structure. There will be 4 main sections of the forum tonight. Firstly, each candidate will be given 2 minutes to introduce themselves to the audience and opening statements. Next, each candidate will be asked long-form questions and given 1 minute to respond. In between each long-form question, we'll be sprinkling in lighthearted rapid response questions. Think Coke or Pepsi. For rapid response, candidates must respond using 1 word or a phrase. We're going to try to keep this portion pretty brief. And please remember, candidates, that this is not a forum, or this is a forum. Not a debate, and as such, each candidate will not be given the opportunity to provide rebuttals, but only given the opportunity to answer the question that's being asked. After long forward and rapid response questions, we'll move on to the audience questions. You probably noticed that there are pens and note cards scattered throughout the brewery and on each table, and that's what these are for. So audience members, please feel free to drop your note cards into the question basket, which Erin is holding up here by the door. But please understand that the time is limited for this section, so we won't be able to get to all audience questions that are submitted, and we will be potentially paraphrasing or combining questions for the sake of brevity and clarity. We also just ask that you please reach out to candidates individually after the forum or via email if there is a question that you must truly need the answer to that we can't get to tonight. After all, they do work for you. Awarding to candidates, again, Clara Bentler will be signaling when you have 30 seconds, 15 seconds, and again, 0 seconds remaining for your speaking times. So don't try to go over. Please try to do the opposite.
Thanks, Lucy. Okay, so we're going to get into it in a minute here, I promise. But before we get into the bulk of the forum and the questions we have prepared, we just want to acknowledge that some of you, like maybe myself, might be wondering what the heck does a congressperson do and why is there a new Western District in Montana? We have some answers for you. Your representative in Congress is tasked with making enormous decisions that impact your daily life. Much of the work of a congressional representative includes holding hearings, composing and authoring bills, developing and voting on legislation, appropriating the budget, attending to meetings, and, most importantly, listening to concerns from constituents like you and helping to solve important issues that impact our community. Being a member of Congress requires a deep understanding of laws and how they impact people. And why is there a new district in Western Montana? Following population increases that were reflected in this year in 2020 census, Montana gained back a congressional seat, creating a Western Congressional District. For 30 years, Montana had only 1 seat in Congress after it was lost in 1990 due to changes in statewide population. Montana is the first state in United States history to gain back a lost seat in Congress. Montana Western District 01 covers 15 counties in western Montana, including Missoula, Bozeman, Kalispell, Butte, Polson, and Hamilton. Montana 2 Eastern District covers 30 counties in the eastern portion of the state, including Helena, Billings, and Great Falls. Prior to the addition of MT1, our lone district in Montana disproportionately represented more people than any other district in the country. The new congressional seat means that all Montanans will have a more proportionally accurate vote in our elections. With this new ability to be heard and represented in electoral politics, Montanans are given the opportunity to have more control over policies that affect our everyday lives.
Yay! That's exciting. Thanks, Clara. Alrighty, so throughout the forum, we've invited all audience members to participate in a game of bingo with a chance to win some great prizes from a local business. So everyone that wants a bingo card should have one. They were passed out by the check-in desk, also by Aaron and Amara, if you guys want to give a quick hand. If you get a bingo throughout, there's no more cards. So sorry, guys. If you have one, yay!
We're playing bingo on you, too.
Yes. Keeping each other accountable. I love it. Okay. If you do get a bingo, feel free to call out bingo, but also remember to write down your name on the red tickets that are also by the door, and we have some scattered throughout the venue as well. And then we'll be drawing 3 prizes from those names for the bingo winners. And with that, we'll hop right in. As mentioned earlier, we'll begin the forum by asking all participating candidates to begin with an opening statement. So candidates, please get ready and keep your opening statements under 2 minutes. There is a microphone there in the middle, and we'll be starting with Matt on the end. If you want to hop up and grab that, and then just pass it along yourselves. Awesome. Thank you, guys. And remember that Clara here in the corner will also be keeping time.
I'm just going to keep the... Is that on? I know, but I'll explain here in a minute. So I think the best way to explain who I am is to say that I'm from a military family. My parents grew up here. They fell in love here. They married here. And I went to school at Meadow Hill, graduated from Sentinel High School, barely. I think I had a 2.0. I went to the University of Montana. My undergrad finished in 2.5 years. First graduate degree at the University of Montana. After my transplant, I have 3 brothers. I have a brother who's 3 years older, who 30 years in the military. My father is 20-year Marine Corps veteran. I'm a triplet. And so I have a brother who's a minute older named Mike, who donated a kidney to me 30 years ago. I have a brother a minute younger than me named Mark, who happens to be deaf. And so I graduated from the University of Montana. My brother and I started a nonprofit organization, helped change organ transplantation policy nationwide. So that's why you can actually donate to actually strangers now, because before you couldn't. And then I went on to Arizona State University and then Harvard, earned a PhD in politics and economics. I think one thing you're going to hear from me tonight is the core issue here is going to be education, or the lack thereof of good education, particularly here in Montana and across the country. There has to be education towards the virtue of wisdom, goodness, and beauty. Right? Not just to be better employed in an increasingly dynamic economy, but also to be better human beings, to be better voters, and hopefully better candidates. Right? So my name is Matt Jetty. I'm hoping you guys come over to the Republican side, vote in the Republican primary, because as we saw in Ohio and Indiana, it really doesn't matter what happens on the left here. With Trump support on the right, whoever gets out of the gate is going to win the election. So I'm asking for your support, because I'm not a supporter of Donald Trump. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. We'll now move on to Mitch.
Hello. Thank you all for showing up. That's a big part. We're all in this together. My background is I'm a builder. I'm a fix-it kind of guy. I own an engineering company. I'm not an engineer myself, but I manage engineers, and we work on solutions daily. I have an associate's degree in applied science. I live up in the Flathead Valley, and some of the passions that I have that I'm working on is a global affordable housing solution. It's going to be 3 billion strong of people with inadequate housing by the year 2050, which I find is unacceptable. That's how I approach Congress, is to take apart the problem, see what is broken, and then put it back together to a desired result. And the experience that I've had thus far has given me a good direction on where we need to go, not only just to run as your congressman and be one of those people that are there to fill the gap after we purge Congress. And you can talk to me more about it in depth afterwards. I hope I get a chance to talk about it. But that's where my thought is coming. The common denominator is that we have so many bad people in Congress that we have to get them out of there in a big way. And to have this election campaign cycle that we're doing now repeated over and over again, decade after decade, it's not getting it done. But I have come up with a solution. It's out of the Constitution. It's a constitutional convention, and I'd love to talk to you about it more.
Thank you, Mitch. We'll now move on to Tom.
Oh, I can sit down and pass. My life got easier all of a sudden. First, hello, Missoula. It is so good to be here. I see so many friendly faces, and hopefully people will become friendly later. Here is one thing. Thank you to Forward Montana for doing this. And also, is there anyone here who's involved in public service at this moment? Anyone? I know I saw Daniel Carlino here, other people. We have people here who are already dedicating their lives, including the good people of Forward Montana, to making our lives better through government and through good policy. So first off, I just want to thank you for that. My name is Tom Winter. I represented House District 96. Hopefully some of you are my former constituents. This was west of Reserve, all the way, way out to Larry's 6 Mile Tavern. I had the great misfortune, or fortune, to win an election in a Trump district that had voted for the guy plus 11 points and was held by a Republican who also happened to be the really rich Speaker of the House's son. We did this through going to every door. We knocked 20,000 doors in our campaign. I myself knocked 10. The rest of us, the many people who were able to help us, they knocked the other 10. We were able to get in front of people and re-knit our community back together after what had happened to us in the Trump years. We were able to bring people back to sanity and to concern for our community and do it through progressive democratic politics. When I was in the legislature, having asked people, what do you think you deserve from your community, I went about trying to bring that into law. As a freshman, I think it was a record, I wrote 24 bills to make our lives better in the state of Montana. I passed 4, which might not seem very much, but I think that was also a record. What we were doing was trying to lower property taxes by taxing wealthy out-of-staters so that you can afford to stay in your home or that you can afford to stay in your apartment. I also wrote the bill to legalize marijuana, the text of which went before all of you, and thank God, in your wisdom, you legalized recreational. Now, in the House, I am trying to do the exact same thing. Our campaign asks, what do you think you deserve from our government? Certainly not loss of wages for 40 years. Certainly not the inability to afford a home. Certainly not a climate in crisis. We are here to give you what we know you deserve. That is a seat at the table in Congress, and that is a voice for the concerns of everyday Montanans like yourselves. Thank you. I also went over 20 seconds. I'm very sorry.
Thank you, Tom. We'll now pass it to Monica.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here tonight. Thank you, Forward Montana, for setting this up over 8 months ago. Invitations were sent to every candidate, and we all were given the opportunity to commit and clear our schedules. So I'm here because I'm committed to you and to Forward Montana and to democracy. So thank you so much. I will show up for you as I have been doing my entire career. I grew up on a ranch in eastern Montana with my 9 brothers and sisters. I went on to row in 2 Olympics in a boat that was a little bit longer than that one and a little bit skinnier. Thank you so much for this wonderful place to gather and to be a community together. Throughout the pandemic, it was one of the places where we were able to come and connect even through those isolated and lonely times. So thank you very much for having this place for us now. I'm a lawyer. I've been practicing law in Montana for 25 years. I've represented Montanans across the state. I have worked for a rodeo clown, ranchers. I've done water rights across the state, and I've worked for you. I've stood up for you to Northwestern Energy and kept $10 million in your pockets because I was there. I bring to Congress a skill set of an attorney who has experience litigating, cross-examining witnesses, and holding people accountable who have a financial incentive to lie. That has been what I've done my entire life, and I will do that for you in Congress. I believe deeply, with all my heart, in representative democracy. This second seat in Congress is not an opportunity for a person to make a name for themselves or use Montana as a stepping stone. This is your seat. This is your opportunity to have our Montana voice heard. This is my home. This is my only home. I have fought for Montana. I've delivered for Montana. And I am running for Montana because it's our fight and it's our voice that we need to take to Congress. And I will do that as your representative. Thank you.
Thank you to all of the candidates. We're now going to get started with our long form questions. Oh. Alrighty. The most recent Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC report, stresses that we must reach peak emissions in the next 3 years and have global emissions by 2030 if we are to avoid catastrophic warming. The report also tells us that we have all the technology needed to achieve these targets. What federal policies and actions will you support in order to meet this critical moment? We're going to start with Monica.
So the IPCC report that came out a couple weeks ago is code red. We don't have time. We are facing an existential crisis and we need to act, and we need to act now. And the good news is that we have the skills. This is a math and an engineering problem. We have the tools to solve this problem. And Montana can be a leader in the energy transition that's already underway. Some of the things that need to happen and some of the things that I will work on are low-hanging fruit. Let's deploy an EV charging station across the state of Montana so everybody can be driving an electric car, and that's a no-brainer. That should be happening right now. I will work on a modernization of the grid. That's also something that can happen. Montana has an excellent grid system that we can modernize. I will work on a clean energy standard, end fossil fuel subsidies, and charge full payment if anybody's going to be using our federal lands. Those are just a few of the things that I will work on. I have brought clean energy projects to Montana. If you look at the wind farm north of Reed Point, that's my project. I've been working on this. I bring a background and a skill set to Congress on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. We'll pass it over to Mitch. And just a reminder to all candidates, we ask you to just speak directly into the microphone as it is a big space.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I agree that it's a dire, if you look down the road, it's going to be a dire situation if we don't pay attention and act now. And so what do? Well, we work with agencies to bring more funding towards innovation like the SBIR and encourage innovation in other areas that we're not hearing much about, like hydrogen. And the electric car is great, but let's do vertical integration from the electric car. Where's all that stuff come from? You know, are we trashing the environment, getting some of that stuff? If you look into it, I think you'll find that that's true. And so something that's not being spoken much about is sunflower oil as diesel fuel. We already have the diesel trucks. If we run them on sunflower oil, which I have firsthand experience with, it happens. It works. And another thing is I have personally, with my engineering company, I have the beginnings of a new interstate system that is electromagnetic levitation and propulsion, and it's auto-centric, so you could keep your automobile, and we go into a new interstate system with automobiles and truck transportation, which would be a great solution for cargo.
Thank you so much, Mitch. We're going to next pass it to Tom. What was that?
Would you mind asking the question again? Because I think there's some specifics there that the people need to hear as well.
Yeah, for sure. The questions are also up there on the Google slide if anyone has
Welcome
any
to my TED
clarification.
Talk on the imminent collapse of our environment.
Do you still want me to repeat it?
No, just start doing my time.
Okay.
Look, I think you can see above me in this case. We have the ability to do this with our technology and our money. We do not have the political will. It is a political failure that my generation is saddled with the possibility of imminent ecological collapse across western Montana. It is a failure of our government. It is a failure of the Democrats. It is a failure of the Republicans. I am here to tell you right now that the current Democratic administration actually has a plan for this. Our state has the largest untapped wind potential in the developed world. Everyone hates to live in Great Falls because the only good bar is the place with the mermaids, and because the wind never stops blowing. I'm joking there, and it's a great bar. That wind is an economic fact and an economic boon for our communities. We can look at the resource extraction times of Butte and replicate that in our state, bring wealth to our communities through exploiting our natural resources in a way that does not harm our beautiful state. The tools, as this huge thing says, are here. The political will is not. And I should say right now, we are running against a man who isn't here, Ryan Zinke. He took $460,000 from ConocoPhillips for a job that he can't even describe. He is an industry shill in an industry that wants to take over our government.
Okay,
and has
thank you,
already done
Tom.
so.
I really appreciate that. I'm just going to get a little bit more, I'm going to tighten up the response time just a little bit because we are going over a little bit and I'm trying to keep a tight schedule. And finally, we will hear from Matt.
I'm going to probably disagree a little bit. It's one thing to say you can do it, but it does become an economic problem. I'll give you an example. In the 1980s, we were 86% reliant on hydrocarbons. We spent $5 trillion since that time, and now we're 84% reliant on hydrocarbons. We simply do not have the infrastructure to be able to do everything you say, which means in 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, you're going to be asking the exact same question why we can't do it. There has to be a new partnership now with new actual players in the game, right? I want wind. I want solar. I want water. Absolutely. But as again, our economy is not dependent on that. You can't just shift on 90 degrees and expect the economy to do well. We have to have an economic solution to it, not just a political one and sound bites just to win your vote.
Thank you so much, Matt. I'm going to pass it over to Clara for the first fun rapid response question.
Yeah, all right, candidates. Thanks, Lucy. For this first very pressing rapid response question, when is your birthday?
We're going to start. We're going to go left to right, starting with Matt.
Do I have to give the year? I was actually, this is a fun fact, I was born 9/26, September 26, at 9/26, because I'm a triplet, so we're on the front page of the Seattle Times, so now I know exactly what time, same time.
This is a fun fact also. May the 4th be with you.
July 10th, and I expect gifts.
Okay, so we've got this in common, except I was born on May the 4th and named Monica because it's her feast day.
I think possibly a little happy birthday song at the end of this is in order. Woo! Alrighty, thank you so much, candidates. We're going to start with the next long-form question for you. So the American Rescue Plan Act allocated $50 million in federal funding to the Montana Housing Assistance Fund to support Montanans. Despite this assistance, housing and rental prices are still on the rise in Montana, as I'm sure many of you know. What can Congress do to support affordable housing and mitigate the housing crisis? And what does equitable housing mean to you? Tom, we're going to start with you.
Our campaign from the beginning believes in full housing policy. Housing equity includes having a roof over the head of every person that needs or wants one. A community that cannot provide safe housing for its community and its community members is not a functioning one. Our community and our campaign have been focused on this from the very beginning. In the legislature, like I said, I actually worked on this issue. My constituents were getting taxed out of their homes. So I did a bill that would have put 0.25%, just a tiny little bit, on every single second home valued over $1 million. There is enough money in the 16-bedroom second home chalets over in Big Sky to pay for that, to zero out the taxes on every home under $500,000. Inequality is what we call that. Good policy is also what we call that. The root of our problem here is unequal distribution of wealth. People can come here and buy the most expensive house in town by refinancing their ranch house in Rancho Cucamonga. It is not fair to us, and I believe that it should be fair. I should also say that I want to end source of income discrimination on Section 8 housing vouchers. It's unfair to renters as well.
Thank you so much, Tom. We're going to go on to Matt.
Like I said before, my brother who's a minute younger is deaf, so I talk with my hands, so I apologize. Housing is an important issue, but it's also an economic one. There's a lot of moving pieces in terms of affordable housing. One, for example, there's barriers for home builders, right? Now large home builders now need compliance officers to get through the barriers. That's hurdle number one. Two, we have a brain drain in Montana. We've had one for 30, 40 years. I'm one of them. I had to leave the state. Now all of a sudden, now with COVID, it exacerbates the problem. Now you have people now with technology that can actually live here but work someplace else. That drives up demand for homes in Montana. You're going to have to approach this not with just sound bites and inequality and something like that, but with solid economic means. So one way to do it, right, is to improve technology. Technology in home building has not improved in 50 years. We actually need to start thinking about those kind of items to allow affordable homes in Montana. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Matt. We're going to pass it over to Monica.
As long as it's a May the 4th birthday, it's all right. So the housing issue, what I've heard, traveling this district, the 16 counties, Whitefish to Bozeman, this is a real problem. In Seeley Lake, there are 4 houses for sale, all of them over $700,000. A starting teacher salary is $33,000. That doesn't work. So the housing issue is rent, and if you can afford a home and get into one, that's the issue as well, right? So let's talk about what some of the solutions can be. First of all, correctly diagnosing the problem. It's different in different places. In Butte, what they're talking about is really, it's about density. Solving the problem there is about density. They have lots and lots of available spaces that need to be rehabbed and rebuilt, but that's certainly a real option there. In Bozeman, the sprawl is becoming really problematic. In Missoula, we need to talk about how can we have more places built, either affordable rent, long-term rent, deed-restricted places that we can live in, and fill in some of the existing area here, right? One of the things that we have to do is get a handle on investment corporations, out-of-state corporate monopolies, buying up supply and using it using the same interest rate.
Thank you so much, Monica.
Thank you. Gosh, Clara. Lucy. Okay. I have more to say, and I'm happy to talk about it later.
Alrighty, and we're going to pass it off to finally Mitch.
Okay. I have a lot to say on this, and the 2 minutes or the minute's not going to be enough. Property rights. Would you like to have somebody come and take what you have worked hard for? There's the equity part. You can't have equal housing for everyone. You have to have property rights come into play with that. But I agree that housing is fundamental for someone to reach their full potential, their self-actualization at the top of the pyramid of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm passionate about that, and I want to see as many people as we can to get there, but we have to get there with education. And we teach people skills, occupational and small business skills, give them a skill set, and then that's going to open up more opportunities for ADUs. I have 3 solutions in my housing thing, and one of them is a big 3D printer that prints insulated houses. I have a decentralized manufacturing program that produces ADUs that are expandable, so you can start small in a small budget and then grow as your family needs go. And I have another one that's do-it-yourself, where you come in like a habitat and you teach people. Those are the kind of innovations that we need.
Thanks so much, Mitch. I'm going to pass it back over to Clara for a rapid response.
All right, candidates, our next rapid response question. What is your favorite small town in western Montana? We're going population less than 10,000, and we're going to start with Monica.
Dupuyer, you can get a Jack and Coke for $4. Sorry.
Peaburg, guys, come on.
There's more than 10,000 people there.
Polbridge.
Aren't most towns at less than 10,000 in Montana? I would say Stevensville, Hamilton.
Oh. Alrighty. Thanks so much, guys. We'll go on to our third long form question. So, young people in Montana vote at higher rates compared to young people in other states. Woohoo! However, here in Montana and across the nation, we continue to see laws that restrict or enact barriers to casting a ballot. What can Congress do to ensure Montanans have access to the ballot box? Mitch, we're going to start with you.
Very important question. We need to have accurate elections. There's a cloud over the elections. It needs to be looked at and fixed. So let's just go to paper ballots and mail-in ballots and have multiple tier oversight to count them and recount them and have people watching over it, because it is just fundamentally so important, and get as much access as we can. But if you don't have the access, you got to move to where it is. If the vote is that important, even if it's inconvenient, you got to drive a little bit to get it done.
Thank you, Mitch. We'll now move on to Monica.
First of all, a shout out to Forward Montana and Western Montana Native Voice for the work that you've done on litigation in stopping the voter suppression laws that were passed last year. Thank you very much for your work. Yes. That's democracy. We can pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and make sure that everyone has a right to vote. So those are simple pieces of legislation that are pending right now. I will stand for those. I will fight for those. I will support those. But getting young people to vote, what we just saw happen at the Supreme Court the other night, this is your issue. And we need you at the polls and voting on this. This will affect you more than anyone else. So we need to energize our young people. We need to make it easy for you to vote. We need to register young voters everywhere. I've been trying to register voters when I'm on the campaign trail. So let's get you registered, get you to the polls, and make democracy feel exciting for you too. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Tom, go ahead.
Well, as Monica said, there's already legislation here. We can pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which in a Congress and a Senate and a federal government that was responsive to our needs would have been done already. But it has not. You wonder why, right? Why is it that our state legislature, currently controlled by Republicans, is so afraid of young people voting, is so afraid of working people voting, is so afraid especially of Native people voting? It's not just their racism and bigotry, but that's a part of it. It's also because they know they can't win the young vote. They know they can't win the Native vote. I'm 35, so I'm like not young enough, I guess, but I think I count there. The reason they're afraid of us is because they know they cannot win our votes with their awful policies. Rather than try to do that, they try to restrict the franchise. People have been doing this for decades. The South was well known for it for quite a while, and the Voting Rights Act brought them to heel. The John Lewis Voting Rights Act will do the same. But we have to acknowledge, as my time in the legislature trying to bring online voting registration, the reason that failed was honestly because they were worried about like a single mom in Seeley Lake maybe being able to pass a ballot and find childcare. That is what we're up against. Disenfranchisement to keep policy from moving forward for people who need it.
Thank you, Tom. Lastly, we'll go on to Matt.
I'm just going to start off and saying it's tiring to hear about the polarization between parties, about us and them. You can't just group everyone in the same group and say all Republicans think this. I'm not saying there's not bad apples in one group and bad apples in another. I want everyone to vote. If you're 18 or older, I want everyone to vote. But also, more importantly, I want you to vote well. That is, I want you to be educated when you vote. You can't just show up to the polls and go all D's, all R's, and expect good things to happen and then take in this shallow conversation of, I'm going to give you some red meat if you're a Democrat. I'm going to give you some red meat if you're a Republican. This has got to stop. You are in Montana right now. You're in the last best place of America. I'm asking you to draw the last line for American representative democracy. You got to do better here. Otherwise, we're going to be in the same place 2 years, 4 years, 6 years from now going, what the hell happened? It's enough.
Thank you, Matt. I'll pass it back over to Clara for a rapid response.
Rapid response. Okay, candidates, what is your favorite restaurant in Missoula? Starting with Matt.
In or near. Stevensville counts.
Anything with a good steak and Irish whiskey.
I can't remember the name of it, but it's the Mexican restaurant right on the intersection with Reserve and 90 there.
I mean, the Ox.
The one I'm standing in right now, because for a girl that grew up on a ranch in eastern Montana, beer is food.
Alrighty. Thank you so much, candidates. We'll start with our next long form question. If elected, what federal policies, if any, would you support to prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression? Matt, we'll start with you.
So as I mentioned a little bit ago, my brother who's a minute younger, a triplet, is deaf. I saw firsthand what discrimination looks like, what it sounds like, and what the lack of opportunity someone has in America when they're discriminated against. I think the best anti-discrimination policy you can have is UBI, Universal Basic Income. And the reason I say that, you need economic mobility, you need economic opportunity, economic freedom, right? I wish I can draw a law that can take prejudice and bias out of people's hearts and minds, but I can't do that. But we can change the economic structure to where people can actually have opportunity, like my brother and his wife, who are both deaf, went to Gallaudet. Right? When you have an employer and they're choosing between someone with knowledge, skills, and abilities and someone who's not, and you go, oh, that person is acting, they're discriminatory towards one who doesn't have the ability, that's not the discrimination part. That's the effect. The discrimination happened well down the line in preschool, grade school, middle school, and high school. It's a poverty of opportunity and poverty of education that we have to address.
Thank you, Matt. We'll go on to Mitch.
I agree that education is fundamental across many issues that we're going to talk about today, and some that a lot of that we're not going to talk about. But if we address this in a national education system, that's a good place to begin, and maybe that's a good place for me to end.
Alrighty, thanks, Mitch. Monica, you're up next.
The Equality Act that is currently sponsored by Senator Tester and had some input from Forward Montana. Thank you so much for that. I would carry that in the House and work for that. But I think more importantly, when we're talking about equality of opportunity and participation, we're talking about all humans. Everyone who is here tonight, everyone who walks in this world has value, and we need to honor that and dignify each other by looking each other in the eyes, recognizing the dignity and what everyone has to contribute. I grew up in a big family, and we had 5 teenagers at one point in my family. And my dad used to say, if you're gonna be at this table and eat this food, contribute something positive. We all have something to contribute, and honoring each other and giving each other dignity is job number 1. And that starts with us, and it starts with leadership, and it will start with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Finally, Tom.
Thank you. Well, first, of course, we can pass the Equality Act, as Monica said. That actually sits before Congress right now. Having said that as well, we know what happened is going to happen with Roe v. Wade, and we will speak about that soon. But I think the important thing to look at this in the case is my father was actually the first single-sex marriage in the state of Oregon. That occurred because of the court, a court that is now ready to take away those same rights as it's taking away the rights of people who can have children. It is important to tell everybody that the basis of that decision is not based specifically in animus toward people who can give birth, though certainly it is there. It's also based on trying to undermine a constitutional right to privacy, on which rests, I need to remind everyone, the Obergefell decision, which allows people of same sex to get married. They are coming for that. They are coming for our right to privacy, which is most of the things that we believe to be the things we have won in the modern world. And I can't say this enough right now. I didn't mean to take that away from the LGBTQ community. However, the attacks against trans youth in our legislature are a part of a larger system attempting to scare people and fearmonger. to stop them from being able to vote the way they want and to curtail the
Thank
rights
you,
of
Tom.
these groups. Thank you.
Alrighty, we'll pass it over to Clara for a rapid response.
Alrighty. Okay, candidates, tell us who your favorite historical Montana icon is. And we're going to start with Monica.
I'll say Lee Metcalf because he was such a steward of the environment and of democracy.
I mean, there are so many, especially from Missoula. Jeanette Rankin, Mike Mansfield, we've punched above our weight for so long. And it's just pretty awesome.
Bob Marshall.
That's a good one. No, that's a good one. I wasn't even thinking that one was a good one. And we're just sharing tonight. So I'm going to go with Mansfield, Marshall. And he's still alive, which is really good, Roscoe. Mark Roscoe.
Alrighty, thank you, candidates. Our next long form question is, according to the ACLU, Indigenous people make up 6.5% of the statewide population, but 20% of the statewide prison population in Montana. As a representative, how would you address the disproportionate and unjust incarceration rate of Indigenous community members in our state? Monica, we'll start with you.
So this issue has two sides to it. So we have to look at it from what is the inputs and what we're criminalizing on the front end, and stop criminalizing poverty, stop criminalizing addiction, and not having a place to live. So those are first things that we can do in our society, and develop and implement policies that give people the dignity of a decent place to live and a good job. So we can start there and do that for our Indigenous communities as well. And then on the back end, to go to the direct question that's being asked is, how do we address the prison populations? I think we have to look at racial profiling, what was happening across Montana, and also to understand that putting people in jail for addiction is not a solution. And we have huge problems in Montana with what's happening with Warm Springs, our mental health issues, treating mental health as physical health, and making sure there is coverage for mental health issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. We'll go on to Mitch.
I'd like to look at what does the treaty say, and where are in the compact and the contract, and that is everybody doing their job? So that would be one thing to look at, and then to look at the prison population, and if it is true that the majority are Indigenous, then I agree a lot with what Monica said, is take a look at that, because we're all human beings. We're all in this together. And if the tribe needs to be brought in more to do more accountability with programs on their side, then that should be looked at as well.
Thank you, Mitch. Next, we'll go on to Tom.
I appreciate everyone's responses, but I think it's important to note that differential rates of incarceration for Native Montanans is the legacy of settler colonialism. Our government puts people in jail who are people of color on purpose. It seemed weird because it's about weed, but when I wrote the weed legalization bill, the biggest concern for me was criminal justice reform. Those bills were written, if you go back to the text, within the lives of our parents and grandparents. They were on the floor of the Montana House saying that the reason they wanted to make weed illegal was to keep Mexicans down, was to make sure that Native people didn't come into town. We currently are in a border town, whether we like to acknowledge it or not, and Missoula does a terrible time doing so. We're next to the lands of the Salish and Kootenai, and on them currently, as we said during the acknowledgement. It's just important to note that all of our laws need to be looked at to ensure that they do not have racial biases built into them. And so much of our system, including our for-profit prison system, is based on putting people of color and the poor, which are often coincident, into jail. And it's unjust.
Thank you, Tom. Finally, we'll hear from Matt.
I'm not sure about all that.
I will say, though, that we have to be very careful in quantifying justice. That is, to put a number to justice. If X is 10%, we can't immediately say Y has to be 10% as well, right? Wherever there's crime, there are arrests. I think there's a variable that cuts through race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, etc., and that is poverty. Poverty is it. And not just poverty in wealth, but poverty in education, poverty in opportunity. Those are the things. And I wish we can get beyond this identity politics and get beyond the real issues of our economy and get to these individuals that need our help, right? They don't really need our help to succeed. They need our help to start. And once they get a start, then they can succeed, right? I hope we can get to our politics, can get beyond this. I really do.
I'm going to pass it over to Clara for a rapid response.
All right, candidates, the people demand to know, are you a dog person or a cat person? We'll start with Monica again.
Aw, I'd break Rocky's heart if I said anything but a dog.
My dog's in my truck outside. Also, I just adopted a chicken.
Well, I hope you're going to get out and go outside and check on him.
Got staff for this.
Might want to open the window a little bit.
My dog, Taffy Joe LaBamba, lived to be 17, and now I have a cat that's half of a duo, and the other half, I don't know what happened to her.
I don't know where to go with that one. I used to be a dog person, but since I've been married now, we have 3 cats, so I'm a full-fledged cat person. I'm all in, and anyone who says they're not affectionate, they do not understand cats.
Alrighty, thank you so much, candidates. We are going to get into our last question before audience questions. The average amount of student loan debt per person in Montana is $33,129. With more and more young people being faced with debilitating student loans, what federal policies or initiatives do you support to forgive/cancel student debt? Tom, we'll start with you.
I'm so glad I get to do this. I wrote legislation in the legislature here to cancel student debt for everyone who'd gone to a college in Montana in the first place. And then everyone called me a socialist. It would have kept 30,000 Montanans from having to leave to go to other places and fix the brain drain that many people talk about. This is not an issue of giving handouts to people. This is about fairness. The people who have had to expect and had to take out the loans are the poor and the working class families trying to better themselves. I support full student debt cancellation, and it's not a crazy thing to say. Everyone acts like this is an insane thing to do. The government holds student debt. It is the government that makes you pay these things. It is not private companies that do this. They simply administer the loans. Student debt is a different animal and a generational tax on people my age and younger that was unfair from the beginning. And it's no coincidence that it began the minute that we started to allow women and people of color and the poor into higher education. The point was to put that money onto those people and shift it away from wealthier taxpayers. And it needs to stop.
Thank you, Tom. Matt, you're up next.
Student loan debt. I think there's a couple things that we can do immediately, which is the public service loan forgiveness program. We can shore that up and expand it. There's other programs I think Biden is actually investigating, which I think is a good idea. I'm not quite there yet on canceling all debt. I'm not saying I oppose it, but I will say there are 3 variables. If I mow my lawn, I mow over weeds, I can clear the debt, but I still have the roots of the problem of education. And I think it comes down to 3 things. 1, education is a steep price to pay to enter into the economy these days. That's far too steep for people to enter into. 2nd, young people have something that we didn't experience when at my age, which is called structural unemployment. It's not cyclical, it's not seasonal, it's not frictional. It is structural, which means you go to school in 20 years, your job's gone. And then 3rd, there's so many demands on the state. The state has to balance its budgets. And the more demands we put on the state, the less money they have for tuition. So tuition goes up and people have to pay more.
Thank you, Matt.
The students entered into an agreement, and they need to honor that agreement. What could be done, though, is that the government that holds the note could restructure the interest on a sliding scale with incentives to pay the contract that they entered into. If we start giving away the student debt here, we're going to have another group that wants a freebie here, another freebie here, another freebie here. It's just going to continue on and on. And what happens when you give people free things? They're entitled. You know, there's a story where a beggar would ask for $1 every day from a guy walking by, and he'd give it to him, give it to him, give it to him. And then one day the guy said, "No, I'm not going to give it anymore." And the guy was the beggar was enraged. He was entitled to that. And so giving handouts actually hurts people. It takes them away from their full potential.
Thank you. Monica, yes, thank you.
We need to look at the underlying problem and where we've been. We have a land-grant college and a university system. And these colleges started for the purpose of educating Montanans at very low rates. That's changed significantly over the last 20 years, shifting the cost from the state, which was supporting these colleges and universities, on to you, and then you carry that the rest of your lives. So we know how to fix this. These are policies that got us here, and we can undo those policies and go back to a time when college was much, much, much less expensive. So it wasn't a crushing debt just to go to school in the first place. The other things that we have are, community colleges. In the Bitterroot, they have a community college. Yesterday they voted not to fund it. Unfortunately, we need to look through that and see what other opportunities we have. These are really, really good options for people to get into the workforce. We can do zero interest loans, lots of other things. MonicaTrinell.com got lots of solutions there for you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Monica. I'll now pass it over to Clara for our final rapid response.
Final rapid response. All right, candidates, what is your favorite ice cream brand or ice cream shop and your favorite flavor?
We're going to start with Matt.
It's ice cream. So, and I hate to start the answer this way, but I was in and out of Duke Children's Medical Center all the time, and I'm a horrible patient. And the one thing that the nurses keep bringing me was chocolate shakes. So chocolate milkshakes is my favorite, period. Oh, go ahead.
Is it my turn? Check, check. I cannot remember the name of the local whitefish. Oh, yeah, thank you. Sweet Peaks and the Huckleberry.
And when I'm in Whitefish, it's Sweet Peaks, but when I'm here in Missoula, it's Big Dipper. And also, let me be an evangelist for the Coke float. If y'all haven't tried it, very divisive.
Do it again where you said.
Wilcoxon's and choke cherry. But when my 18-year-old started making waffle cones at Big Dipper, she said, "I think they should charge more than $1 for these."
Alrighty, thank you so much, candidates. We're now going to hop into our audience question segment. We're going to take just a brief little pause. We're going to try to keep it to a minute or two. But yeah, we'll be right back.
Thank you.
Alrighty, we're going to get started with our audience questions. We will ask all candidates to return to the stage. Sorry about the name tag shuffle. Again, we're going to allow 1 minute for response. Please try not to go over. And Clara Bentler in the red will be keeping time for us again. I'm going to pass it over to Clara McCrae for the questions. Thanks, guys.
All right, so these are 1 minute responses. And for our first audience question, now that we know that the Supreme Court is poised to act on our right to abortion, if elected, will you vote to ensure the right to access abortion continues regardless of the Supreme Court decision? And we'll just start with Monica and go down the line on this one.
Yes, day one, 100% all in. Let's be very clear. This issue is not about abortion. This is about a woman's right to participate in the world on our own terms. Since yesterday, I have had a number of women come up to me and tell me their abortion story. This morning, an 80-year-old woman stopped me and told me about her abortion where she had to go to Mexico. This is wrong on so many levels. I am so proud of my 18-year-old daughter who called me the night of this decision in DC and said, "Mom, I'm going down to march on the court." And I said, "Go for it, honey. This is where you belong." But this is not where women belong. This issue is so wrong, and I will fight for women. I will fight for our voice to be heard, to participate in this world. I'm the mother of 3 daughters. Now this fight is personal, and it's mine, and I will fight for you.
First off, thank you, Monica, for your voice on this. This is what we need. We need committed public servants and candidates fighting for your rights. Your rights as women, your rights as trans people, your rights as men, non-binary. It does not matter. The courts should have nothing to do with your personal decisions. The thing is, it's a Montana value. How do I know this? Not only from going door to door, but also our state constitution provides the strongest rights to privacy meant to protect the right to abortion of any state constitution in the entire country. We are entering a world where we are the lone beacon of abortion rights. Without Idaho, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, Utah, they are going to have to come here. So when I will fight for abortion rights at the Congress, I do this knowing it is a Montana value because it is what is enshrined in the words of our very Constitution. We have led on this issue nationally for 40 years, and we will continue to do so from my congressional seat, but also from our legislature and from everyone here fighting to keep a government that wants to tell you what to do in your doctor's office, keeping them out of our lives. Thank you.
Abortion is not the biggest issue that's facing America. It's important, and it's important to a lot of people. I think that the national government needs to focus on the issues like China. Everything we buy is fueling their war machine over there, and they very well could be over here in the next decade or two doing the same thing that is going on in Ukraine. And I do honor women's rights, and I think that abortion needs to be addressed at the state level.
Thank you.
I think if you look up in the Dictionary of Endangered Species, you'll see my name as a pro-choice Republican. Yes, 2 days ago, I thought we were living in 2021, or 2022 rather. Shit. Now, it doesn't matter what I say, but it feels more like 1022. It feels like we've regressed. And I'm sad. My wife and I talked. We both shed tears. We took a step back in America. We did. And I know I'm a Republican, but we got to get better at this. And I know this issue now has just made our country so much more divided. I just want to promise you guys which side I stand on. I'm a pro-choice Republican, right? My goal is it doesn't matter what your goal is. My goal is to have women have rights. To have the state say you own their body for 9 months is fucking ridiculous, right? So we got to do better as a country. Thank you.
All right. Did Monica already go? Is that it? Yeah. Okay. All right, thank you, candidates. Our next audience question, tell us your plan for reparations for Black and Indigenous peoples. And we'll start with Mitch.
Yeah, I'm stumped on this one at the moment, so I'm just not going to comment yet.
Fair enough. Thank you, Mitch. And we'll move on to Matt.
Wasn't expecting that question. I think we have to begin a new conversation to make the economy open to everybody. I don't know if we're having the right one. In terms of reparations and Indigenous people, I'm 100% behind it. But as an economist, I don't understand how we get there. Someone needs to tell me how we can afford it as a country, how we can afford it as a state. I know what is right, what is moral, what is ethical. I get it. I'm not having that argument with anyone in here. I'm having an argument that's economics, right? I'm trying to make sure that there's a trade-off, right? I think as a country, we've done a pretty damn good job so far. We're not at the finish line. I'm not making that argument. But I think we have to pat ourselves on the back and say we've done pretty good so far, and there's more improvements to have. But I think we need to have a better conversation around this issue versus dividing.
Thank you. Monica?
$250 ago, we had a constitution that has the word slaves and savages in it. The most important thing we can do today is to make sure that all of the people in our country feel seen. The invisible people right now are the ones who are suffering. And where we start to make our country great is by owning and acknowledging our mistakes and our failures. America is great because we're growing. We are becoming ever more inclusive. Our journey is to be a more perfect country, knowing that we have failed in many, many, many ways. But our failures are opportunities to grow and to learn. And that takes leadership. And it takes understanding that because we have fallen short, it doesn't mean we need to continue to live in that place. Reparations are making people whole. That starts by making people seen and inviting everybody into our democracy all the time, everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Tom?
I appreciate this question. I'm sorry, but it is not enough to come up here and give people words. It's been 250 years. It was wrong from the beginning. Chattel slavery, stealing an entire continent from a people, genocide. We can call it what it actually is. It might not be good politics to acknowledge what our country was born in, but it's moral politics to try to make it right. And there is no making right what was done to the people of color, specifically Black and Native of this country. However, we have to do more than stand up here as a bunch of rich white people and say we want to do something. We actually have to do something concrete. My campaign is working currently with Indigenous-led national organizations on plans to talk about nationally giving back at least the national parks, or at least adjacent federal lands to the tribes from which they were stolen. Lands are best managed by the people who live on them. And what better people than the people who have lived on them for millennia? I apologize if this seems somewhat, what would it be, impolite to actually answer with concrete things rather than just good words. But imagine what was done to these people. No one in here, very few, can imagine it. And the idea that all we have is to stand up here with a mic and be like, we got to do better, what does that mean? What does that do? It does nothing.
Thank you, candidates. Our next question is, tell us about your plan to expand access to mental health care and substance use treatment. And we're going to kick it off with Monica.
We can start by recognizing that mental health is a healthcare, period. And so funding it through Medicaid, Medicare, all of those programs need to pay for mental health care. That's a really important piece of it. Addiction and mental health, these are things that are crises in our country right now. Opioid addiction and the consequences of that. So funding treatment, but also I think it all comes back to having dignity and a purpose and a meaning for life. I mean, that's not, mental health isn't all solved by that, I get that. But I think having a place to live, having a good paying job, feeling like you belong in your community, developing programs that start from the beginning to care for each other and to treat each other with dignity. And I think that's a good starting place. And then where there are problems, early intervention, care, education, all of that is really critical, and I will fund and support those programs.
Thank you, Monica. We'll move on to Matt.
That's a great question. I will start off with this. I believe in universal health care. I also believe that mental health is just important, if not more important, than physical health. But I also believe that in terms of education, what young individuals are seeing today is a clown show. When I was young, I used to see our politicians out in the open. They acted somewhat adult-like, and then they go behind closed doors, and maybe there were clowns behind closed doors, I don't know. But now you have a clown show taking place, and the only ones that want to go to the clown show are other clowns. Then we tell them that you're not going to have the economy that you expect. They're going to tell them you're not going to have the jobs you expect, right? Then they have battered homes, and all of a sudden, they don't know what to do. It comes down again. This is a rare thing for a Republican to say. It comes down to better education, where we pursue virtue, goodness, and wisdom, and we walk hand in hand with our young.
Thank you. We will move on to Tom.
While serving in the legislature, I worked on Health and Human Services Committee, and we often spoke to care providers, also families that had been affected by suicide, by the lack of mental health services. I know it's not my district, but there's only one psychiatrist east of Billings, a place the size of Connecticut. The reason that we have adverse health outcomes across the board in the state of Montana, the reason especially that we have adverse health outcomes when it comes to mental health is because we ration healthcare based on how rich you are or your community is. The reason there's not enough psychiatrists in our communities is because our communities aren't rich enough for anyone to care. And I don't mean the psychiatrists, I mean our system. From the beginning, our campaign has been all in on Medicare for all, universal health care, single payer, whatever you want to call it. The circumstances of your birth, the circumstances of a car accident or a broken arm should not put you or your family into the poorhouse. No other country does this. We victimize the poor. We victimize the working class based on the fact that we make our broken for-profit healthcare system the thing that puts them in debt. Honestly, it's a moral catastrophe. And answering it is not going to be something where we just go like, maybe we put a little few things here and there. Maybe we try and give psychiatrists, tax breaks. Yes, I'm for these things. But if you're not working toward Medicare for all, you're not working toward justice in your community.
Okay,
you're working
thank you,
toward
Tom.
rationing healthcare for the poor.
Awesome. We're going to move on finally to Mitch.
We are facing a healthcare affordability crisis, and that includes mental health. And some innovation needs to be applied, and some programs put in place to make healthcare more affordable. One thing that I was thinking about was it comes back to the education system. It's a for-profit education system. So our doctors have huge debt. They have to charge a huge amount of money. So all these things are tied closely together. If we can, within Congress, work on solutions that have far-reaching effects in many areas to have maybe a voucher program to where the individuals can use the health care for mental health or whatever they're looking for, and then local clinics that can be built with community efforts to make the physical building less expensive, and to help with the education, to bring the education down and have local doctors helping. That's just a couple of ideas, but there's a lot of work to be done there.
Thank you so much to all of our candidates for those thoughtful responses to the audience questions. That is the end of audience questions, and we'll now move on to bingo winners and prizes. We didn't get quite as many bingos as we might have anticipated, so if you got a bingo, you don't even have to raffle for it. You just get a prize. Alrighty, so we had one winner, which was Maggie Bornstein, and she already left and received her prize. And the next winner is Casey Denson. Woo! The prize is a $20 gift card to 5 on Black. Okay, we just had a last minute submission, which is exciting. Two even. Eric? $20 gift card to 5 on Black for Eric. And Bill. Woo! Alrighty, folks. Thank you so much. We're not. Honor system on this one. Alrighty, that brings us to the end of our forum. I want to just give a thank you to all of our candidates again for your thoughtful responses. To all of our audience members. Guys, that's a lie. It's not the end. We have to do closing statements. So, we have 1 minute for each, we have 1 minute for each candidate, and we will be, again, timekeeping with Clara. Okay, we're going to start with Tom.
Oh, a minute, my God. All right, guys, look, my mom's in the audience, by the way. If you saw me texting, it's because she was giving me pointers. True millennial stuff. What I am advocating for on behalf of our communities is not radical. Single-payer healthcare polls at 71%. Abortion rights, 69%. The country is with the things I am saying. The country is with us. I have won an election. I might be seen to be the most liberal person on here. I'm the only one who's won an election whatsoever. I won an election of Trump Republicans on these values because these are Montana values. And if I seem angry or animated, it's because I know that we are getting a raw deal. And I know that Montana before has changed things. We have been able to lead the country, and we will do so again, bringing prosperity, a broadly shared prosperity, to all of us. And everything that I've spoken about here, disagree or agree, one, find me after this, because you know I can't stop talking. But number two, I have done this before. I have won over Republicans, Democrats, Independents on the strength of our community ideals. And I'm doing everything I can to uphold them in this campaign. So I do hope you'll support us. I have a website, whatever. But please, really, go out and see my dog in the car soon, because I'm going to be out there. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tom. I'll pass it over to Mitch.
A big shout out for you guys being here. Being with the mechanical mind and the way I approach things, what I've learned on this campaign is the biggest takeaway for me for the solution for all these different important topics and is the common denominator of a dysfunctional Congress. And if we send a few folks from Montana up there to change the guard and do the same thing over the 50 different states, that's not enough. We have a bucket of 535 people in Congress, and we don't know who the good and the bad and the ugly up there, but we're not getting the results. That's why I'm here, to get results and to take things apart and see what is broken and then to get it fixed. And so the best thing that I've got right now comes back to you guys, and it's the Constitutional Convention with term limits. And it clears house. It's across all boards. It's across Democrat, it's across Republican, any issue you want. It doesn't matter. We all pull together, and that's what this country needs is unity.
Thank you, Mitch. We'll pass it over to Monica.
Thank you, Forward Montana, for doing this awesome roadshow. All of the candidates were invited. Thank you to everyone who has showed up here to give you the opportunity to hear us. This second congressional seat gives us hope. In this time of extreme inequality, where it looks like we're going back 50 years with our rights and 100 years economically, we have hope because we have a choice. And you have the power of your voice, and we have the power of Montana. I am running for Congress because this is my home. I have been fighting for you by your side in the trenches with my feet here on the ground in Montana for 25 years. I will serve you and I will serve Montana and the middle class because it's who I am. Let's send a Montana voice to Congress who will fight for us. This is not my fight. This is our fight. Let's send Montana to Congress. I'm looking forward to being in this with you. MonicaTrinell.com. Happy to be here for you. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, we'll pass it over to Matt.
I'm just going to start with my website, Jetty for Montana. I agree with you. There is a choice to be made here. We saw in Ohio and Indiana, and I'm just going to be Machiavellian with you right now. We have to be practical here. There is a real danger in Montana, right? That if someone who's not here, and I agree, do not reward in a democratic process someone who's not being who's being undemocratic. That is, they're not showing up. He has a real shot of winning here. I'm asking you all, right, to come over to the Republican side and vote against this individual, right? Have a good general election. My policies come down to three things: education, education, education. I'm asking you to vote well. Vote practically. I know there's a lot of things, a lot of complicated issues. You're working harder and longer for less. I get it. But on this vote, this matters right now. I beg you to do the right thing here. We can actually make a difference here in Montana. Thank you.
Alrighty. Thank you so much, candidates. I'm going to pass it over to Clara for a couple last things.
Last things, we promise. As we get ready to head out, just a few reminders. If you have moved since you last registered to vote, just turned 18, or want to become a first-time voter in the state of Montana, you need to register to vote. The close of the regular voter registration deadline is this upcoming Monday, May 9th. After May 9th, you will need to go to the county elections office in person to register. As a result of the preliminary injunction on House Bill 156, you can currently still register to vote up until polls close on Election Day, but this is subject to change, so check out forwardmontana.org for up-to-date information. For folks who are registered as absentee voters, ballots will be mailed on May 13th. If you don't receive your ballot by May 20th, check with your local county election office. And for folks who are registered poll voters, you can vote at your polling place on Tuesday, June 7th. All ballots must be received by your county elections office by June 7th by 8 p.m. Make sure to mail your ballot in by May 31st, also known as the last 7 days before the election, or drop it off in person. And finally, if you're wanting to help Forward Montana get out the vote this primary season, be sure to sign up and volunteer with them. They might give you a microphone and let you host an event, so there's all kinds of fun things you can do. Thank you all so much.
I just want to give one final thank you as well to Imagination for allowing us to host this amazing event. It's an amazing space. And also to MCAT for donating all of the tech that we're using here tonight so that you all can hear us. Thank you so much. This was lovely, and I appreciate you all coming. Cheers. Bye.